Tenderhearted, the podcast for those of us who struggle with being extra sensitive in a less than sensitive world. This is your host, Amy Kelso. I'm a writer, speaker, teacher, and advocate for anyone who is tenderhearted or cares about someone who is. Hello and welcome to Tenderhearted. I am your host, Amy Kelso. Today I kind of want to just talk about the fact that our society, at least, in the last 20, 30 years, I feel like there has been a negative view of people who are tender hearts, and just in general, people who are compassionate, caring. When you care about the others, that in the society we have currently is kind of been looked down upon as weak. And specifically, honestly, a lot of any of the traits that are considered feminine traits tend to be, at this moment in our society, something that is looked down upon. So if you are caring, kind, compassionate, if you are concerned about helping others, all of those wonderful things, when you think of a mother, like the ideal mother, right? We have, as a society, kind of created an environment where we look down on people who reflect those caring kind of roles. Because what's happened is we've had a real focus instead, for better or for worse, the whole idea of everyone for themselves, right? It's a dog-eat-dog world where you got to scrape to survive. You got to do the very best you can and step on whoever you need to, because they're going to step on you if you don't step on them. So you might as well just, fight your way to the top. And that's kind of been the common mentality in our society the last couple decades, at least. I think to some extent that was intentional, that the people in power like it when we are all, every man for himself, fight against each other. Because if we're fighting against each other, we don't have a chance to fight against any bigger powers. So therefore, a society where people are fighting against each other for every little scrap tends to be a society that isn't going to rise up and rebel against those who have the real power in the world. And this also plays out if you look at careers that were traditionally female, or at least in the past were mostly female. So the ones I'm thinking of the most, of course, is teaching and nursing. So teaching and nursing and jobs like that, when most women stayed home, but some women did work, these are the kind of jobs that they did, right? Those were considered appropriate for a woman to do. Because those jobs are traditionally female, even though now we do have males, obviously, we have male teachers, we have male nurses, but it's still a predominantly female industry. And it is totally an industry focused on helping others, right? And taking care of others. Any jobs like that, there's been this attitude of looking down on the people who do jobs like that. And there has been a squeezing of those of us in those types of jobs. I have experienced some of that myself. Again, I've been in education for 20 years, and I've watched how they've taken the role of teacher and just squeezed the life out of it. All of the regulations, controls, standardized testing, there's so many little things that they just make it harder and harder to really do what teachers are meant to do, which is help care for our students, right? Teach them, guide them, help them become better citizens, which is in theory the goal of education. But although that's what most of us feel is the purpose of education, in a lot of ways I feel that has been corrupted. And I think it goes back to when we first started standardized testing, and specifically judging schools and teachers based on the results of those tests. Theory behind it, of course, was then we could tell who the good teachers were and we can reward the good teachers. That's not what happened. It was never about rewarding good teachers. It was about punishing the teachers that didn't fall in line, and of punishing the schools that don't fall in line, and about controlling the population. Now, this is my view on things, but I really feel like the main thing that standardized testing did was it made it so that there was so much information that we had to get crammed into our students' heads at any way we could, that so they could pass that test, because that was what really mattered. So we push this information in your head. But you know what happens when you're so busy trying to teach students facts and information to pass a test is you don't have time to teach them how to really think for themselves, which really, in my opinion, is the purpose of education, is to teach people how to think for themselves. But that is not what our education today is set up to do. It is set up to have people who can't think for themselves, who trust whatever is told and don't understand how to decide if the source is biased or not, try to decide if you can trust it, look for credentials, all those things that we hope adults have. We're not teaching our students because we don't have time. We just in general, teachers in America at this time, are so busy trying to get our students to pass those standardized tests, to cover this curriculum that we're told to do. Plus, there's so much, all these other things that have been added to our plate. So many extra things that have been added. Nothing's been taken away except for time, and specifically the time to really work with students on learning how to think for themselves and to analyze information and all of those important skills. So why are those important skills? Well, for example, that allows you to be able to know what's going on in the world and to make decisions about politics and about who you vote for and what you support and what you don't support. When you're not taught how to analyze what comes to you, you might find a TV station or radio station or something that tells you the news and you just believe what they tell you because you don't know how to decide if you agree with that on your own. Told something, you're supposed to believe it, you believe it because that's what you've been trained. This will help you pass the standardized test. The teacher tells you something, you believe it, you pass the test, yay. Then you go out into the adult world and you don't know how to think for yourself. So then somebody on the radio or somebody on TV or social media or wherever says something, you believe it must be true because they said it, right? You don't have the skills to really decide for yourself what you believe in. I think that was intentional. I have been in education 20 years. I have watched the effects that standardized testing has had on education. And I strongly believe it was intentional to discredit teachers and to not allow teachers to teach thinking skills to the students in public education. Now, don't get me wrong. That is the students who are in public education that are getting this training on how to be good citizens. Do what you're told. Don't question things. Just keep going along. However, that doesn't mean all of our children are getting that training. Only the ones who are in public education. So those who can afford private schools can get different training. So they can be the leaders in the world while the rest of us are trained to be the grunts and the workers. Tell me, I don't know. To me, I feel like that was a very intentional thing that was done. And we are seeing now the results of that. I've seen this coming for a long time, but the big question is now, how do we turn that around and change it? And that I don't have an answer yet, but something I'm definitely pondering every day. So there's some thoughts about tenderheartedness as far as careers go. So thank you.